The ClubSport DD was one of the highlights of the 2023 Sim Racing Expo. I was able to talk with one of the engineers in charge of the ClubSport DD design at a certain length to talk about its evolution from the CSL DD, how it differs from the CSL DD, and especially from the Podium DD1 and DD2.
The CSL DD or GTDD Pro was the basis for the CSDD. So it's a very similar motor in its ground functions. So if you look at the magnets, it's almost the same magnet. It's the same shaft, except that we used in one the CNC version, and in the CSL GTDD it's carbon fiber enforced plastic and so on. So there, if you really compare piece by piece, you will find very many similarities.
The reason that this wheelbase feels like it's always at 12 millimeters or 15 millimeters.
So basically we are having not much overshoot, basically none. We go directly up to the 12 or 15 Newton meters, and then it stays like almost a flat line. It goes a little bit down after, like a small amount, but it's not noticeable at all. It feels like an overshoot because we have such a high tempo of how quickly it goes up to the 15 meter. So in the first instance, it feels like there is an overshoot. If you compare it to the DD1, for example, it feels very similar. The CSDD Plus has 50 Newton meters holding torque, and it stays flat for very, very, very long time without getting hot. The Podium DD1 has 20 Newton meter overshoot and then goes on to a 15 Newton meter holding torque. But this wheelbase is in the slew rate double the base. So I think we talked about that shortly. And because it's so quick, the impulse feels like an overshoot at that point.
Acceleration of the ClubSport DD and DD Plus, or the slew rate, is exactly the same at 6.2 Newton meters per millisecond. That puts it basically on the same range as the Fanatec Forte, above the Semicube Sport. At a certain point, these slew rates don't really matter because all of these mentioned wheelbases are excellent, but they do provide a little bit of crisper details and acceleration in multiple circumstances. This helps with your connection to the road a little bit, and also it shows the evolution of the ClubSport over the CSL DD, but especially over the DD1. Temperature control is a very important topic because these smaller direct drive wheelbases tend to have no active cooling, no fans at all, and they have much smaller cases to dissipate the heat. Some of the smaller direct drives have been reported to get hot to a point it's unbearable to touch on top, and also it will cut your performance of the force feedback by some degree, and it's something that is reported oftentimes. The Fanatec CSL DD and DD Pro never really got warmer than lukewarm, but the power is now increasing, and Fanatec has a new strategy to deal with the extra heat.
So the temperature, we have introduced a brake chopper into the passive cooling housing, so we can see a cable coming out on the right bottom part. This brake chopper's function is just purely to dissipate over or not used electricity into heat. So if you're using your wheelbase, if you're catching a slide or something and you turn in the same direction as your motor turns, you are using it basically, or you are a generator at that point. You are producing so much electricity that it cannot go back into the power outlet of your house. So the PSU is most of the time limited in that perspective. So the tricky part is to manage the heat, the buildup of heat, or how to dissipate this over consumed or not consumed electricity. So in our tests, in normal use cases, it will never go over 45 degrees. So if you are going to hold it into its limits, and you will like pushing 12 Newton meter for a half an hour, you will notice that it's going to get a little warmer, but that's not a use case. So basically you are not feeling any temperature.
A major point of this ClubSport wheels is the full force.
So basically the technical background, I'm not sure of the Logitech. I will need to verify that, but if I understood correctly, they just take out they take the sound output of the game of the PC PlayStation and swap that into a vibration output. So the vibration output should be technically similar to ours. I think we are both doing the same thing. The difference is that we are trying to work much more closely with the game developers and really try to give them our feedback of what kind of effects and forces we want to feel. So we are still early stages with the game developers, so it's not really only depending on us at which stage every game will be available, but the main focus at this point are iRacing, Assetto Corsa, or Assetto Corsa will be next, but Gran Turismo, iRacing are now, and then Assetto Corsa will be next. So we always work closely with the game devs, and we want to implement this from every game. So, but they will get our SDK, and the customer in the end will not have any effect of this. Much interest, like especially the guys from iRacing are really on fire. So they are asking a lot of questions, and they are looking into it, how they can implement this feature, because they already saw what the True Force or the potential behind the True Force, but did not have the chance to develop specifically something for the game yet. So they are quite excited. And with the feedback from Polyphony for Gran Turismo is also great.
The thing about this wheelbase is how big of an improvement it is over the CSLDD, and especially over the DD1. The CSLDD is the entry base, but this, in terms of force feedback quality, feels over the DD1 in very remarkable ways. It's one of the fastest wheels I've ever tried in getting to the big force. It is super smooth, and it really holds the torque extremely well. I mean, if I get it for review, which I hope I do, I'm really interested to see how this wheel is going to perform in the likes of Assetto Corsa and Assetto Corsa Competizione, especially in drifting. I think for drifting, this might be something completely bonkers.
The technology and thought process behind the ClubSport DD is super interesting. There were also another points we talk about, like the shaft extensions, because they weren't really set in stone. They aren't really sure about it, so it's really no point to talk them at a certain length. But from what I've tried out, they were really interesting. They generated zero wobble and zero friction. But once again, since they aren't really set in stone, it's something to be hopeful for, but really you shouldn't expect them at all. Still, the ClubSport DD series felt a little bit like a game changer for Fanatec. I know this is a really overused word, but I think this is somewhat of a game changer for them. For example, the CSLDD was also a game changer for sim racing because it offered a small direct drive mass market that pretty much everybody could buy. I say this because this is a CSLDD evolution of sorts, overperforming the podium DD1 and being neck and neck with the big dogs out there at a very reasonable price. I think things like this are definitely game changers. It's very much in the same vein of the CSLDD because we're talking about a mass market, really not very much expensive direct drive when everything else was really expensive. Therefore, I think something like a ClubSport at that performance and price point is something that you really need to pay attention to. And you also need to imagine this. If a ClubSport with this technology is able to overperform a podium wheel, imagine when the podium wheel is refreshed. It will be a sight to see. Hopefully I get one to review because I was truly impressed.